Hello to everyone, my name is Shekeb Hosseini and we are going to treat in this video the question of market targeting process for companies willing to export, of course, abroad. It's what some professionals call the internationalization process. When organizations enter foreign markets, they have to make decisions about which region, countries, markets, or segments to target. As marketers, we talk about the market selection process or market targeting, and a number of factors will influence companies' choice. Let us start by listing the learning goals for this video. First, we will address what the connection with the rest of an organization's internationalization process is. Secondly, we will look at how we can compare and evaluate different countries or markets so that we're able to make an informed choice of which one to select. Finally, since no two organizations are the same and they behave differently, we will provide an overview of some different approaches to a market selection process. So let us begin. What is the connection to the rest of an organization internationalization process? When an organization goes from marketing their products and services from their home market to also target one or several foreign markets in different countries or regions, we talk about an organization's internationalization process. An organization's internationalization process starts with the choice of which foreign markets to target. We call this the market selection process. Secondly, we would need to address how to organize the entry to the foreign market. Here we discuss which entry mode to use, and many factors will influence our decision. Ultimately, we would define our marketing mix, the 4 of the 7 P's, for the foreign market. The marketing mix we use on the foreign markets may vary to the ones we use on the home market. We would address this regarding standardization and or adaptation of the marketing mix. The initial market selection is what we will address in this video. So, how can we go about making an informed choice of which foreign market to enter? For that, let us use an example of a French business. Let's call it French Delices, which is producing desserts. In these modern production facilities, well-educated confectioners develop recipes and create delicious cakes. Desserts and cakes are frozen immediately after production and are then distributed to a variety of catering companies, restaurants, and cafes around France. French Delices would like to expand its business to international markets, and its eyes are set on either the UK or Sweden. They have some but very limited experience in these two countries, and they have asked for our professional advice on which of the two markets to go for. So, what should influence our choice between these two markets? For that, firstly, we will investigate the market and attractiveness, how attractive each market is for French Delices to enter. Secondly, we will investigate the company's competitive strength or competitiveness in each of the two markets. We will then use the findings to plug the two investigated markets into a matrix in order to provide an overview. Finally, we will look at French Delices' internal situation in order to define their capabilities to serve either market. We would conduct extensive secondary and primary research in order to gain valuable insights for the comparison of the two markets' attractiveness. So, let us look at some of the factors we can use to compare the two markets' attractiveness between the UK and Sweden. Looking at the country's general economic and political stability can provide us with knowledge about the general prospects of doing business in either country. Both countries are rated well thanks to magnets, but the UK slightly lower. So we will give the UK 2 magnets and Sweden 3 to indicate that if compared to this factor, Sweden is more attractive. The UK has less magnets for evident Brexit issues. The physical distance from the home market has an impact on costs for travel and distribution and could also influence delivery times depending on the distribution setup. The UK market is closer to France than Sweden, making the UK more attractive measured on this factor. Psychic distance addresses the perceived distance, or how to say, how close or distant French délices feels to either market. They have revealed to us that they understand the British business culture better than the Swedish one. Therefore, they feel a short psychic distance to the UK than to Sweden. Market trends in Sweden are showing an increased demand for organic and so-called healthy cakes, a business area that French délices have experimented with before, but which proved unsuccessful in France. The Swedish trend is very interesting to French délices. In the UK, trends in the catering industry is showing increased demand for frozen cakes and desserts. The market size of this industry can be measured by looking at official statistics for the industry in each market. The UK market is much larger than the Swedish, which makes the UK more attractive measured on this factor. Market growth rates tells us something about the potential for French délices to establish themselves and grow in the market, and it turns out that UK shows growth rates in the market for cakes and desserts that are slightly higher than Sweden. An investigation on the average contribution margins and general profitabilities of the already established companies in each market shows that business is tough and equally so in both markets. So now we're able to visit our matrix and place the two markets on the y-axis based on the scores we have assigned them, each on the evaluation of their market attractiveness. Out of 21 stars, 21 magnets possible, Sweden reached 12 magnets in total, and UK reached 16. Therefore, Sweden will be placed in the middle region of the y-axis, and UK will be placed in the upper region, as you can see on the matrix. The UK seems to be a better choice at this stage, but not until after we have addressed French délices case competitive strength, where we know each market's final position in our matrix. So let us move on, and we will evaluate French délices competitive strengths on each of the two markets. Firstly, French délices market share in each market has an obvious influence on how strong their competitive position is. They have established a small market share in the UK and is, however, almost undetectable, so let us provide half a weightlifting man for this score. In Sweden, the market share is non-existent. They have only had small, sporadic export orders. The French délices current financial resource for each market will show the extent to which they have been able to conduct a profitable business in either market. And it turns out that although almost insignificant at this stage, they have made a small profit in both markets. Access to a distribution channel is very important to gain foothold on a new market. If all available channels are heavily guarded by strong competitor to network relationship, this will negatively influence French Delis's competitive strength. In the UK, although it is still early days, French Delis's have managed to gain access to a distribution channel since they have started dealing through an agent with a promising network. In Sweden, they have no access as yet since sales have been through sporadic direct export only. Competitive strength is also affected by how well a company product fits to the market demands. French Delis's cakes and desserts have been reported to fit both markets well, and in the UK, slightly better. Country-specific know-how is also important in gaining competitive strength. As French Delis's have started to gain knowledge through their dealings with a local agent, they have some but still very limited know-how in the UK. Sweden is still a known territory. So now we're able to visit our matrix again and place the two markets on the x-axis based on the scores we have assigned them for competitive strength. Before we do so, please note that the x-axis points the opposite direction to what you might expect. It's illustrated here by the order of awarded weight lifting guys. We used 5 factors enabling a maximum score of 15 weight lifting guys. Sweden reached only 1.5 weightlifting guys, and the UK reached a slightly better 4.5 weightlifting guys. Sweden was placed in the middle position on market attractiveness, if you remember, and with the 1.5 weightlifting guys for competitive strength, we will slide the Swedish flag to the position you see. The UK was placed in the upper region on market attractiveness, and with 4.5 weightlifting guys, we will slide the UK flag to the position you see. This exercise has given us a good overview of the two options, and we are able to say that the UK seems to be the better choice. However, before we suggest that the French Delis's goes ahead, we would recommend that they look at some internal factors. We would recommend that they consider their available skills and resources within the company, and ask themselves, do they have the required financial resources to undertake a more serious expansion in the UK? And do they have the right people with the right skills in establishing the entry? Secondly, we would recommend that they consider their product adaptation capabilities. Firstly, addressing whether or not the existing products would need some adaptations to suit the British market, and if so, whether this is something they are both willing and able to carry out. And finally, we would recommend that the French Delis's identify sources of competitive advantage relevant to the UK market before going ahead with the next steps of the process. So, a combination of factors addressing the market attractiveness of each market, the company's competitive strength in each market, as well as the company's capabilities, should all influence the choice of which market or country to target. And we can also say that the more analytical the selection process can be carried out, the more informed the final choice can be. We have now established what the market selection process is and how it is connected to the rest of an organization's internationalization process. And we have gained knowledge of how to compare and evaluate two proposed markets by addressing a combination of different factors. Let us move on the final part of this video, where we will provide an overview of different approaches to a market or country selection process. Although no two companies follow the exact same process, as marketers we often talk about these three different types of market selection approaches. The reactive approach explains those situations where the international markets are not proactively chosen. The so-called selection process is instead characterized by being purely reactive to external drivers. If, for example, a wholesaler in Sweden contacts French délices and inquire about a supply of French desserts, this could be the first step to a reactive market selection for French délices. The neighbor approach explains those situations where the international markets are close to home markets, and selections are made based on criteria like geographic, psychic, or cultural distance to the home market. The analytical, or some also call it systematic approach, implies a more complex and thorough process, and resources are needed to allow for the collection of required secondary and primary data. Marketers most often recommend this approach as the one that provides the most informed decisions of which countries and markets to target. In theory, the screening of markets begins with the world market as an option and ends with a narrowly defined target market within one or several selected countries. The process includes several steps. It starts with a selection of macro segmentation criteria and development of micro segments. This is followed by a thorough screening process of selected segments or countries. This is much the same as the evaluation we carried out in our example, only potentially more detailed. And finally, macro segments in one or more selected countries are developed and chosen between. The extent and depth of this approach is often adapted to suit the resources available to the company. Often we will find that when companies select new markets to enter, they use a combination of adaptation of these different approaches to suit their needs and available resources. The systematic approach or analytical approach is in a more or less detailed version is the most usually recommended by marketers. We have now completed the learning goals of this video by providing an overview of the different approaches to the market selection process. Thank you very much. I hope you will watch more of our videos. Don't hesitate to visit our website www.naiju.com. I remind you that this video is part of a series of 3 videos about the internationalization process. Thank you very much.